Sparky Coach, take two, because I fumbled so many words in the first one. Talking today about the true cost.
Reframe, frame.
Ref, just
Anything
like
that
that.
ends in pain.
Just unplug it and plug it back in. That's if it's a tripping RCD, just unplug everything and plug it back in. See what happens. Talking today about the true cost of being an average business owner, or the true cost of being an average employee of the business. And I think when you can frame yourself as an employee of the business, and that's a really helpful thing. I found that incredibly helpful for my business to be like, what if my job was to make the business effective, efficient, and profitable? Am I doing a good job of that? And obviously, if you're still involved in the business, that should be your core philosophy, your core role. You should be in that sort of finding clients, retaining clients, finding staff, retaining staff, and the high level quoting. That's where you're heading to. And so many of us get bogged down into day-to-day procrastination, or day-to-day hamster wheel, or day-to-day treadmill, whatever you want to call it, and sort of so busy but not achieving anything. And it's one thing to be busy, and we're not saying that's a bad thing, but when you can combine hard work with smart work, I think you're in the right spot. And there's no point just being busy for the sake of busy. You can go broke at the beach, or you can, you don't need, do you need to be doing everything? Do you need to be like putting the big flatty in the screw in the switchboard and like tightening everything up? Or can you tell someone to do that? So there's a micromanage that comes into it. But I think so often we want everyone else to excel in their role when we're flailing in the role. So I think when you're the business owner, when you're the big dog, one of the hardest things is you're not accountable to anyone. So no one's going to be like, hey, how'd you go today? And you're like, yeah, what? Yeah. And that's an amazing thing. And that's why people start their business, because you don't want to answer to someone. But essentially, you should be accountable to the business. And you can't just, the business can't just absorb your high wage for nothing unless you've set it up in that way. But I think staying accountable, being accountable is so important, because otherwise you might get to the end of the week and you've been really busy, but you haven't actually achieved anything of substance or value. You've driven around from space to space, place to place, and put out that fire, put out that fire, put out that fire. But and all the little low level tasks are done and you reconciled, great. But, you haven't made sure there's work for next week. You haven't retained those clients. You haven't looked after that staff, and you hadn't foreseen the future. You hadn't seen if the week was profitable or not. So I think it's just time to sort of stop being average and start being excellent. So I want to go through some things today, but Cam, what are you thinking?
I remember once someone said to me, the difference between you as the business owner and the rest of your staff is you carry the financial responsibility, and that is it. So take away you're paying the wages as such, and the directorship as such is like the financial responsibility. That's literally the only difference between you and the rest of your staff members. And everyone has a different role, obviously. So you might have ops managers, estimators, project managers, apprentices, tradies, etc., admin even. But so the difference really between you and them, or that business role, is that you carry the financial responsibility. Once you take that away from the conversation or the equation and step back in, you could be the operations manager, right? So first and foremost, I think you need to think of yourself as an employee. That was probably a bit of advice I got a long time ago. It's hard. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it to say that it's easy, because you get caught up in a lot of things all the time that have influence on the business, and it's where the prioritization comes into it. So that's one thing I think about a lot, and often around, there is actually really no difference. And I also remember someone telling me once, if you were to look back on your week each week, so if you were to reflect on each week, how would you rate yourself as an employee? And I think that is a good way to self-reflect, but also put some things into perspective around what you need to be doing. And now we're going to dive into a few bits and pieces that we sort of feel around how, I guess, play a bit of an importance around the week. And the first one, and I'll throw straight to you, Crowe, around, is planning the week.
Yeah, so huge. So back to what you were saying with the employee, seeing yourself as an employee, I think one of the key things is to do that. So define sort of your roles and responsibilities. And I guess that's like, if you do that, you can essentially replace yourself. And so often you see people employ operations managers or admins, and those admins and operations managers have zero idea what to do because you don't know what you were doing. So it's if you've got to sort of define your role and responsibility. But all right, so the business owner, how to have a productive or successful or week, and keeping in mind progression beats perfection. So I feel like looking at it on a week level is great, but looking at it on a day level is even better because you can reflect and be like, oh, what happened? Like, why did I get thrown at that point? And I was doing so well, and then the phone rang, and so you can basically go back, and we'll get into that. But the 4 steps are going to be: you want to plan your day. You want to work out what you can prioritize. What's the priority in that? You want to execute, and then you want to reflect. So you want to plan, you want to prioritize, you want to execute and reflect. And getting into the planning. So it's like the big thing about the plan. This is huge. And the best advice I got was if you're in the office, and we're talking sort of specifically, maybe in this situation around the office, but you can relate it both ways to office or site. But the best advice I ever got was if you're in the office, stay in the office. So plan your day. I remember going like, I can't get on top of the admin. And I was leaving every single day to go out to site and going for here for 2 hours, here for 1 hour. Did I really need to be there? Or could it have been a phone call? That's a great question. And maybe there is no answer. But I remember coming back to the office at 11, having lunch, making a couple of phone calls. It's 1 o'clock. Now I'm planning my day, planning tomorrow. And it was like, there's nothing of value got done. I was just literally just like, yeah, I was busy. I was driving around, but nothing was happening. So I think reflect, like sort of, I think planning your day is really important. So like, what are you doing today? What are you doing tomorrow? And then one of the key things I like to do is, you might have, 7 quotes on and this and that, and just try and have a bit of a plan of what you can get done in the day, right? So this has worked really good for me. I think if you're in the office, you should be in the office. If you're on tools, you should be on tools. And there shouldn't be that sort of, that's the easiest way to sort of compartmentalize it.
What you're saying there, Crowley, sorry, just to cut you off quickly, is you're
Oh,
saying
so
if you're going in
if
to
you've
the
got an office
office,
day, have an
yeah,
office day for
yeah,
a full day, right?
yeah,
And too many people say that's not possible. And I would probably be like, well, you probably got the wrong team. If you've got to start everyone every single morning, you might be golden handcuffed by a couple of apprentices. You might have the wrong tradie on the right job, all this kind of stuff. But like basically just trying to plan your day for success. So this is how I like to work it. If you're in the office, stay in the office. If you're on site or doing site visits, stay out there. So if you're going out, go out. If you're staying in, stay in. One of the best ways to do that is let's just take an example. Every Monday I'm in the office. Every Tuesday I'm in the office. Every Friday I'm in the office, and just book it out like a switchboard. Chances are you've never missed a switchboard job before. You've never missed a truck appointment, level 2 appointment, whatever you call them out there in Queensland. You've never missed that because you booked it in and you have to be there. So imagine if the office, you had to be there. So I plan for success. So every Friday I'm doing this. And if I'm keep getting pulled out of the office, it might actually be a hiring indicator. I might not be the worst person in the world. I can't commit to anything. Maybe I just got to get some boundaries in place. Maybe I've got to get some staff members in place. But coming into that, I used to love so let's say as you get more off the tools, Monday, Wednesday, Friday was an office day. Tuesday, Thursday was site visits, or the other way around. Tuesday, Thursday is your office, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday are your site visits. But try and get some sort of themes around your day. So once I was fully cooking in the office, Mondays was check the invoices, send the invoices, approve the pays, and quote. That was my, and then on that, even on a micro level, how long is that quote going to take me, and actually book that into that day, so that was huge. Tuesday might be site visits. Cool. Where am I going? What am I doing? Book it in. So I'm not just pulled by the wind everywhere. Wednesday was quoting again. Usually that's sort of quoting and maybe a couple of site visits. Thursday back onto maybe you're managing a job that you got to be at for 4 hours a week or 2 hours a week. Every week's a little bit different, but there's some sort of key themes. And Friday was just the tasks and the schedule for next week. And that's like an operations manager role. But, it's very easy to get blown between sort of trees, and so it's very easy to sort of get dictated to by someone else. But I think having some boundaries around the schedule is very critical. And I remember some of our biggest builders would call, or biggest clients would call, but, oh, can you come out Monday? And you got to know when, like, yeah, I can. I got to rework that. But sometimes you can ask the question, oh, hey, look, I'm actually, I've got something on that day. Can we do Tuesday? And sometimes it's no, but a lot of times it's like, yeah, sure. So, but if you've got no boundaries, you just say yes to everything and you end up achieving nothing or very, very little compared to what you could do. So try and reflect on like when you're planning your day, try and think like an employee. Like if the business was paying me, what would I need to produce? Because there is a need to produce something, and often the stuff you need to produce is actually key to the success of the business. So it's of a high level, but so often we can just get blown with the wind. Thoughts?
Very comprehensive is my first thought.
Ooh, planning. I planned this out. I planned this podcast.
Probably the first thing that springs to mind around the planning side of things is around planning your week and planning your days is just the hours as well. So have an understanding around where your hours are going to be sitting within that particular week, and that may be pretty rock solid, static, or it may be a little bit fluid depending on certain activities that you have or certain commitments that you do have, outside of your work commitments. There could be family, or there could be certain, things that you do in your personal life. But have a bit of a rough idea around where you're going to start and finish. And now I also think what this highlights then is once you start pushing those hours, essentially your workload is increasing. So it gives you an opportunity then to stop and reflect, which we'll bounce on shortly as well. But if the hours are creeping, why are they creeping? Is what you want to get to. So what's happening here? Is it because I'm procrastinating, which is, I think, a art that has been perfected by every business owner ever? Is it because I have people who are average within my team who are creating more work for me? Is it because I am under the pump, full stop, so we actually need more people to assist us? Or am I trying to do everything and micromanaging as opposed to delegating out? So, and they're just some of the reasons that could be. But I feel like if there's a bit of an idea around your start and finish time, it gives you a little bit of an idea of when you're starting to push the boundaries, and it creates an opportunity to be like, why? So that's probably my key thing around the planning.
That's huge. And I think that's huge because so often as business owners, you set zero boundaries around planning your hours, which I do feel like there's got to be that element of sacrifice at the start, that sweat to start. If you paid everyone to do everything from the start, you might not have a business. And there's that love, but there's also crossing the boundary of that love into like just neglect for self, right? So you got to know those boundaries. Let's just say and I remember the end of my sort of like Crow Electrical realm, I was working sort of 9 till 2, 4 days a week. I'd earned that, right? If I had done that 9 till 2 at the start, the business would have not been okay. So you can function through sort of like how you want to roll. So in the planning, what do you need to do this week, and have you set your time? So that's absolutely huge. Now I've got to prioritize. Sometimes it's literally like picture going up to a rough-in or a job that's 3 weeks long, and I'm like, I need you out of here by tomorrow afternoon. So I was like, not possible. Your best efforts to be the best Sparky in the whole universe will be thwarted by the job is actually too big to fit into those 2 days. So sometimes our admin tasks, where like when we prioritize, it's like there's too many tasks to fit into my plan. So that's one of the biggest things you see. So that, if now that presents procrastination, like you were saying before, like it's if I can't do everything, I'll just do nothing. And I get really stuck. All the old Simpsons fans will when Mr. Burns goes and gets checked for being sick, and he's like, I'm invincible. And like, no, actually, like you've just got so many diseases coming through at once, they're all stopping each other from doing anything. It's actually heaps funny. But basically, sometimes you can look at your day and be like, oh, there's too much in here, and it can just stop. It can stop you. Maybe you got that quote you said you're going to get out yesterday. Maybe it's something like invoicing from last week, like all this kind of stuff. But you got to prioritize. And the hardest thing about admin work sometimes is the fact that if you're behind from last week, if last week you had 8 hours of work, then I guarantee that's 16 hours of work this week, just because you're trying to catch up on where you were last Monday. If you're behind 2 weeks, you can basically double it. If you double it, and it gets exponential. So every time you get late on admin, it just takes so much longer. So if you're in a catch-up mode, sometimes you just got to lock the door, turn off. I was going to say turn off the lights, but turn on the lights and just hack the mainframe until you're back up to date. And now we can look at progressing from there. So sometimes you can feel incredibly overwhelmed, but it's just that you're just behind. And anytime you're behind and trying to work out, what the guys or girls were doing last Tuesday, it's so difficult, right? It's hard. So just try and stay on top of it. But prioritize. What can you actually fit into your week? So once you sort of take an hour and just go like, okay, here's my hours. Here's what I have to get done. Here's what's nice to get done. And here's what I shouldn't be doing. So once you sort of prioritize your week, you'll be able to see what fits into the box you already created with the plan. And that's a huge one because too often business owners get stuck on the low level administration tasks that really someone else can do for a lot lesser rate than what you're worth. And you've got to put yourself in the seat. Like we sort of said before, are you finding clients? Are you retaining clients? There's no point finding clients if you're not retaining clients, right? There's no point finding staff all the time if you're not retaining staff. Those things, if you want to make a company of value for that lasts a distance, you're going to need to retain staff and to retain clients. And you're also going to need to have some sort of systems and processes set up so an admin can come on and do things. And so we got to hand things over. But prioritizing will show you what you can fit in and what you can't. And then you go like, okay, of the stuff that I'm fitting in, is it of that high level? Is it the stuff where I need to be? If I was paying myself, would I look at it and be like, yes, I'm in the right spot? And then whatever's additional to that, how can I look at getting someone else to do that sort of work?
I like it. I like it. Yeah, prioritization is a big thing, and the focus points that you need to get done. So I think there's a number of priority tasks that need to be done every single week. So depending on what your role is or what you do within the business, there's the quoting that needs to be done. There is the invoicing that needs to be done. There's the job execution that needs to be done. Then there's going to be the general front end. So inquiry, communication, scheduling, planning that needs to occur. Then there'll be some other back end bits and pieces to be sorted out, communicated to across to people. And then there's just general communication as a whole within the business. But it's about identifying like what are the key tasks here that need to be done every single day and every single week, and identifying what they are and then prioritizing them. So it's okay if there's 200 things on your list to do, right? For example, right? But out of those 200, how many of them are actually important now? As in, what are they going to make an impact on right now? And what I mean by that is that you might have 200 items on there, and one of them could be, I'd really, really like to get the logo changed for the company. Another one could be, I'd love to look into getting new uniforms for the team. Another one could be, I really, really need to make sure that we have stubby coolers for Christmas, and this is January, for example. All noble tasks, all relevant, right? But is it going to matter if they're not done for a week, 2 weeks, a month, maybe even 3 months? So what I'm meaning by that is identifying what are the key things that are going to have massive impact, massive influence. So that quote for the builder that you do 10 houses for a year, that's pretty important. The invoices from last week, extremely important. The variation that's came up needs to be discussed and sorted out. The conversation with your tradie, for example, that needs to occur. So there's a bit of fluidity to it as well, that a task may come in and take priority or precedent over another important task, but it needs to be actioned today. That one won't matter if it gets to tomorrow. So this is where I like to write out what I'm sort of doing, and sort of I don't want to make it a list as long as my arm. I sort of like to make it 10 or so items, 10 to maybe 15, because that's achievable in a day for me. Because otherwise, this is where the procrastination and overwhelm I found came in. It's like you're looking through your list and you're flicking over a page, or you're on Asana or whatever task management, and it's just this list, and you spend like an hour every day looking at the list of being like what I need to do, and it's like, well, no, that's not. It's like what are your top 5 almost, and if you get those 5 done in 2 hours, sweet. What are the next 5? So I think it's really, really critical to find what your groove is around how you prioritize and focus on them.
Yeah, and even setting some times
Yes.
against everything. Like, so, okay, let's say you're still in the mode of checking invoices. Okay, that's going to take 2 hours a week. So I'm going to assign 2 hours a week to that. But the prioritization is absolutely huge. And I think you were saying, like someone who shall remain nameless was working on a capability statement or a employee handbook, and it's like, well, hang on, you've got no work in 2.5 weeks' time. Like, you might want to focus up on that point. So often you've got these, like you were saying, great and noble ideas, but is it critical to life for the next day? And so it's about recognizing what that is. So sometimes, for instance, you can see people need to capture job notes, and it's causing them 90 minutes of stress every day, chasing up people via text message, WhatsApp, email, and insert whatever task you want to that point. It's not happening smoothly. So, okay, so if I spent 90 minutes working out the job note script on my job management system and go, hey guys, this is how we're going to do it from now on, that would save me an hour every single day. Like, if I sat down and actually worked out the quote that I was putting together, compared it labor materials versus a price book, that's going to save me money. And that's going to save me time, because I'm now prioritizing what actually matters. Too often people take their eyes off the things that actually sort of move the needle forward in your business, which is like, are the jobs we're doing profitable? Am I selling the hours that I bought? And am I closing the month? Like, that's the most critical thing you can do in a business. And back costing or front costing, so checking the job before you do the job or checking the job after you do the job is like, there's no one would disagree that is probably the most critical thing that you do. You basically check the job before and check the job after to see if you handled it like you quoted it, and how did it go, and what do I need to change from that way in. But it's one of the first things to go when you get busy. And I think it shouldn't be. It should never go. But usually it's like, we're busy, and the fact that if you prioritize, it'll sort of show you everything. Like, it'll show you, okay, do I need to hire a staff member? Do I need to hire an apprentice? Do I need to hire an admin? Do I need to put on an operations manager? Because I can't get this square peg in this round hole. And I think the prioritization is absolutely huge. So plan, prioritize.